Mammals are pretty well known. Why? They're big, they're easy to discover, and there's only about 6,000 species. But, having said that, we know very little about the mammals of Asia, northern Africa, most of Africa, and northern and central South America. Let's look at birds. Birds are perhaps the group of animals that is the most studied and the most reported by scientists, by bird watchers, by the whole eBird project. There's more data on birds than any other group of animals on Earth. Yeah. Look at all that is unknown about birds. Again, most of Asia, most of North and Central Africa, most of North and Central South America. Let's look at plants. Plants are the lungs of the earth. They produce oxygen. They suck up carbon dioxide. They are the ultimate controllers of climate. What do we know about the species of plants? Not much in Asia. Not much in most of Africa. And then now it starts getting really bad. Let's look at the insects. Again, Asia, Africa, and South America. Not bad in Australia, pretty good for North America and Europe. What about mosquitoes? Remember I said that biodiversity is critical to pharmaceuticals. It's also critical to understanding how diseases spread, whether it's by mosquitoes, whether it's by viruses, whether it's by bacteria. If we don't know the insects or the mosquitoes that spread the disease, we won't know anything about the disease. And we won't be able to intervene in its spread. Mosquitoes are very poorly known. Not bad in certain parts of Australia and certain parts of Africa and North and South America. But otherwise, it's a blank slate. Sandflies. Why do I choose sandflies? Because they transmit diseases, terrible diseases for humans. We know very little about them. Viruses. I don't have to talk to you about viruses. We know what viruses can do. Here is one example of the power of knowing about a certain species, and which happens to be a disease transmitter. When we know the information about that species, where it lives, what its ecology is, what its temperature range is, what it eats, and so forth, we will understand how it can spread disease and how we can stop it. So, this Asian tiger mosquito is a carrier and transmitter of dengue fever, chikungunya fever, and yellow fever. Terrible, terrible diseases, most of them fatal. Their native range is in Asia, and these are all the records we have of their native range. Using this information, scientists at the University of Kansas, at the Natural History Museum, were able to do an ecological modeling that were they to invade the United States, where could they live and where could they spread their disease if they were carried? And this is the ecological niche model. This is basically the entire southeast quadrant of the United States would be invaded, and a little bit on the west coast. How accurate is this? How accurate is our ecological niche modeling with basic biodiversity information? There's the predicted on the left, and here is the actual model of how it would spread. So it did invade the United States, and that's exactly how it spread. It's not spread to get all the areas predicted, but it's getting. This is so powerful. If we have the biology and we have the computational tools to model how they spread, we know where to stop the insect from spreading. We know where they spread, and we can put interdiction to protect people against the diseases that they are carrying. Okay, that's challenge number one, the diversity of life. Challenge number two, with thanks to Paul Clay, is the tree of life. How all the organisms, the plants, animals, and bacteria, the diversity of life, how are they all related to each other? How did they all evolve? Who did they evolve from? Who did they all share genes with? Well, we have much to discover there as well. And let me show you how much. This is a non-Paul Clay tree of life, an ordinary one. You would see in at least a biology textbook. There's the known world, and that little red dot up there, that's where you are. So where are you on this tree of life? There's a known world of plants, one-celled animals, fungi, bacteria, and animals. Let's zero in on that red square where you are. These are the 1.8 million species we know of. You're there. Let's zero in again. There's Homo sapiens. That's where you are. Evolutionarily and genetically between a rabbit and mouse and that amphibian. And for every one of those bars, more or less, we don't know the relationship of about 10,000 species. Unless we understand how they're related, we are ignorant in applying pharmaceuticals and applying agricultural products, say pests that destroy corn, wheat, coffee, and other things. This would be easy if it was Bart Simpson's tree. I really like the sponges. But you know, it's not Bart Simpson. It's a huge task that biodiversity scientists are involved. And what they're using more and more, of course, is genetic technology to figure out who is most closely related to whom and which animals and plants evolve from which species of animals. So the third challenge is the language. We have the diversity of life, the tree of life, now the language. How much do we understand about the genetics of all the species of Earth? We have much to discover. Here's an example. Here's a genetic tree of known life on Earth. Bacteria, which are pretty easy to sequence. The archaea, which is a very ancient group of bacteria. And on the bottom, the green, is the eukaryotes. Those are all animals and plants. So the vast genetic diversity that we don't understand is still ahead of us. You are at the tail of that green graph. Most of the rest on that graph, we don't know what we don't know. Fourth, the challenge is how do you take the diversity of life, the tree of life, the language of life, and how do they all fit together to form the web of life, the ecosystems on which all of life life support systems of the planet? We don't know. We have no idea. Imagine, here's a thought experiment while you look at that gorgeous sketch. Imagine an intelligent life lands on Earth from a distant planet. And they have to be very intelligent because they defy the laws of physics as we know them to get here and to stay alive. They emerge from their spaceship. We approach. They say, we're friendly, but we have a couple of questions. And landing on your planet, we notice there's lots of forests and trees and deserts and seas and that. How do those ecosystems work? We scratch our heads and we say, we don't know. We think we have a couple of ideas here and there, but we really don't know what sustains them. We don't know how many species will become extinct or have to become extinct before each of those ecosystems crashes. We don't know. They say, okay, let's ask another question. How many species live in those ecosystems? The fishes and the algae and the insects and the worms and the mammals and so forth. We scratch our heads and say, well, we don't know how many species, but we think there's 10%. Okay? They get in their spaceships and they say, sorry, you guys are really primitive. And they fifth, and perhaps most important, is how do we integrate our understanding of all of these natural systems? Once we do understand them, how do we integrate natural systems with human systems? How do they interact so that we can sustain growth? How do they interact from agroecology energy ecology to urban ecology? How can we achieve a peaceable kingdom between the natural world and the human world? How do they interact? The reason that's important is because we have entered a new geologic age called the Anthropocene, the age of humans. Why is it called the Anthropocene? Because in the Anthropocene, we, humans, Homo sapiens, are now the most powerful agents in transforming the planet. We are transforming the planet. Not volcanoes, not earthquakes, not seafloor spreading, not mountain building, not continental drift, not a meteorite hitting the Earth 66 million years ago or tomorrow. It's us. Nothing is transforming the planet as we are. In the Anthropocene, there is no longer a difference between what we call natural history and human history. They're one and the same, inextricably linked. One, think of a drop in a lake that ripples out. A drop in human history affects natural history. A drop in natural history affects human history. They're intertwined. Why is this important? Well, here are the lessons of Easter, right? In which all of the biodiversity became extinct. And the people, the indigenous people of Easter Island, became extinct. Here's a graph. It's not a great graph. But what they did was they mowed down their tree cover, in part to make statues and other kinds of things. They extinguished their biodiversity. And in doing so, they extinguished themselves and they extinguished their culture. Another lesson, with all due respect, another lesson of these gods is that their gods pictured here, they pretty. Their gods did not intervene. Why is it important for Democrats to get elected? Because none of them I know about will ever say what Senator Martin said. And this is just indicative of the rest of the Republicans. It's God's will. Even if the scientists are right, for all we know, God wants the earth to get warmer. Well, I'm glad he talks it. If it pleases him to see half of Manhattan underwater, or Miami wiped out completely, this is the senator from Florida. Miami wiped out completely, then we cannot stand in his way. So, my polite answer to this, and I'm sure we all have been quiet, is to remind people that there are two kinds of belief systems. There's high belief. This is Franz Franken's The Damn Thief Cast at the Hill. And high belief is based on faith, which is fine. And it is a belief that only humans, only Homo sapiens, among all the known 1.8 million species on Earth have. There's no evidence that any other species has a high belief. But that's okay. There's also what we can call low belief. This is Vermeer's The Geography. And low belief is based on data that is analyzed, modeled, and a narrative, the results produced. That's low belief. That's what science does. It's the structure of thought. I think, therefore I am. So my answer to Rubio is, it's time that high belief and low belief were peaceable people. And they should stick to each other's domain and not presume to know anything about the other domain or instruct them. When it comes to climate change or evolution, or any other subject, I think it's extremely important to bridge the divide between faith and between reason. Between faith and reason. Not just about the environment, not just about evolution, but certainly about choice, which is the topic of the moment. But of course, there are many other topics. That divide is reached. We respect each other's domains, We respect the knowledge that reason gives us. We respect the spirit that faith gives us. Be much further in that. Faith, after all, for those who have faith, provide a sense of place and purpose in the universe. It does not inform Senator Rubio about what God wants to do with the climate. And reason informs us about the how and why of the universe, and how we should sustain it for the future. What is the combined knowledge to conserve the life of the planet? Here is a very, for me, was a striking example of the Anthropocene. Using a real-world experiment, the COVID lockdown. The planet has a global seismographic network that measures earthquakes, but everything, any wobbling on the earth is measured by this network of seismographs that is all around the earth, all those dots, all those stars, all those triangles. We have an accurate measurement of the Earth's vibration. What does it show us? Okay, this is 2020, in the right at the beginning of the pandemic. From February 15th to March 30th, 2020, world seismograph registering just the rumbling of machines all around the earth, and earthquakes and so forth. There's the red line and blue lines on the top. See how high they are. Then we have the COVID lockdown, when factories shut down, when cars quit driving, when we quit going anywhere. Industry virtually stopped. From March 30th to May 15th, the earth literally stopped vibrating. The land we live on quit shaking. If there was any more telling evidence of the Anthropocene, I can't think of that. When the lockdown eased, the rumbling went up. This is the effect humans have on Earth. Here's a record from Belgium. From January 6th to March 16th, 2020, notice how high it is on the left, then on the right, I read forward from March 3. How the national electricity use plummets right after the lockdown. Wait a second. Can you imagine living in Punjab, India, and not seeing the Himalayas for 30 years? But suddenly, after the lockdown, the Himalayas came into view. And what a view! Because pollution lifted from their industrial output. How about China? China's smog. On the top, before the lockdown. Bottom, the skies cleared above China. So let me finish with this. That Homo sapiens, we, all humans, we are a biological entity first. When we think about the biodiversity of the planet and climate change. We are a biological entity before we're Catholic, before we're capitalist, before we're Democrat, and God help us before we're Republican. Or before we're anything else. In the environment, we like to assume, and the assumption has been here all along, that the environment is just there. It's a silent backdrop, not passive backdrop, to everything we do on Earth. It's not. It's our source for life, and unfortunately, it's our source for garbage. And it's our responsibility to remind ourselves that the environment is not a silent, passive backdrop to the human experience of life. Thank you very much. Can I ask you just to move your mask on for you guys?
If you were to ask the current Congress to allocate money and so on, if you had the opportunity to tell them, because sometimes issues like this can simply be overwhelming for a significant number of people, and they stop at it. They just get frozen. But to avoid that, what would be three things that you would ask Congress to do to address climate change, the environmental impact of the Anthropocene? Because just as a citizen, I think sometimes I just have to reduce it to something within my grasp.
That's a great question. And for those who didn't hear it, what are the three things I would advise Congress to do to address climate change? First, and this will not cost a lot of money compared to what Congress spends money on, I would finish what Linnea started in 1750. Finish the flooding census of life on Earth. If there's 18 million species, we can census that life very quickly. We can understand the role in ecosystems. We can understand genomics, which would provide a huge boon to the human economy, because there are going to be many, many, many hundreds, if not thousands, of pharmaceutical products, agricultural products. That's number one. So Congress can easily fund the work that it would take to accomplish challenges 1, 2, 3, and 5. It's the budget of like one farm, one portion. Second, and Congress is doing that now. To my knowledge, the Biden administration is investing, at least it was part of the infrastructure bill, to invest a great deal in alternative energy sources. That has to be the current, in the 50s or 60s, it was the race to put people on the moon. Now, that race has to be in renewable energy technology, because not only is it the right thing to do, and not only will it take us away from fossil fuels, which cause a great deal of climate change, but it is a smart economic thing to do. Here's an example. Which car Does anybody know which car or which company sold the most cars in California last year? Which Ford, which GM, which Chrysler, which car, which Toyota, which? Thank you, the Tesla. And the Tesla is an awesome. Even when you do the entire calculation, what does it cost to build a Tesla, the batteries, everything else? Far and away over environmental. So that's just a small example. And of course, the companies are realizing this. Ford is about to issue, and many of you may have put down a deposit to get the Ford 150 truck electric, which can be parked outside your house or on your driveway or in your garage and can power your house for 8 days if there's a power outage. So every single car company is investing in electric vehicles. And many of them are swearing they're not going to produce any more internal combustion engine vehicles in the next 20 or 30 years. It makes great economic sense. The country or the culture that will develop renewable energy technology will rule the world economy. And China, believe me, has invested. They're invested very heavily in that. Of course, at the same time that they're building a coal-fired electricity plant every week. So they're doing both. That's number 2. Number 3. Well, what would you say is number 3? Sorry?
Restorative agriculture.
Restorative agriculture. Excellent. Yeah. Because water. The next words will be over water. And they make it over to be wars in Western Kansas. Between neighbor and neighbor. In the United States. We're getting a lot of rain. Western Kansas is running out of water. Lake Mead is at a low level, so they're discovering bodies that mine killed.
I think there was a tie for number 3, so I'd like to go with Kathleen's consent.
I'm sorry,
I think there was a tie for number 3, so I'd like to go with Kathleen's consent.
All right, number 3.
This is thinking a little bit in the future, but yes, I am this old. I remember that when Sputnik went up, our government thought, okay, we need to start educating our children with an eye to the future. And why can't we start turning this back around and start educating our children with thinking about the science that preserves our future and giving a bigger focus in our public education and our kindergarten on, I don't care what, to start educating our children to go into jobs, getting them ready for jobs and education that helps promote all of these things that we are going to need. Finishing the census of the animals, devising restorative agriculture, energy programs, cars that are not polluters. I think educating our children and doing it in a way that is a national effort and serving as an example around the world.
Yeah, who can argue against a modern, forward-looking education? Well, we could be doing more.
Yes.
My heart is out to all the teachers. My admiration goes out to all the teachers here and around the country, around the world, who have one of the toughest jobs.
Well, because
When they are not respected as much as they should be, they don't earn as much as they should. And when political forces intervene in what they can teach, especially in the facts as they do. But the optimistic side of that is that all of the students I meet, and of course most of them are at university, because so much of their education is as much as their wonderful education is in school, so much of their education is from the internet and from the reading they do from all the social media, the good, the bad, the ugly. But they are very aware of the crisis that's facing the globe with biodiversity and energy, and they are turned on.
Ask you a question. You're talking about Tesla and the F-150s. All right. Tesla's coming down in cost, but how, when you say that's the best time, income level, how do we really say that this could be in the future of those that are medium or low income, because both of them are very expensive.
Correct. So that's a great question. And it's, I mentioned Teslas. How can most people, middle and lower income people, afford a Tesla? The good news is, I predict next year there will be a $30,000 electrical vehicle that anybody can buy. And the year after that, a $25,000 electrical vehicle. Next year, it'll be called the Chevy Equinox. Right now, you can buy a $30,000 Volt, Chevrolet Volt. I don't advise you to do it because it's going to be extinct in the air. I really go on about electric cars. The price of electric cars are going down and will plummet as research, as the kind of research you're talking about, technological research in battery technology reduces the price of production, reduces the price of manufacturing. I predict that within the next 2 years, 3 years, at most 5, we will be inundated with the Volkswagens, the Beetles of electric cars. There have been some already. The problem is they were sold by car company. Sorry? Yeah, the Volkswagen has one, but it's still too expensive. But I predict in the next 2 to 5 years, every single person will be able to afford an electric car. So it's up to the administration and it's up to the commercial entities to install the charging network across the country. That's just like we have gas stations. Now, I don't know how many of you know this, but when cars became very popular, there were very few gas stations. It took 10 to 20 years for what we now have, the gas station network across the country. It will not take that long for the charging.
And what does that do to electricity costs?
Good question. What does that do to electricity costs? Well, again, is it Norway or Denmark that is now completely self-sufficient? I think it's Norway, in electricity only because of wind turbines. That's it. Wind turbines have made them completely electric and self-sufficient. Denmark is doing the same. You fly to Copenhagen, you're flying over floors of wind turbines. Kansas, smartly, is the wind turbine capital of the United States, and could be a lot better were it not for the terrible legislation that you have to do. Sir?
I'd like to comment on affordability of electric vehicles. I think you should balance that. Although, yes, I feel strongly that everyone should be able to afford an electric vehicle. However, I think we should also keep in mind the most popular vehicle out there, and has been for years now, is the non-electric Ford F-150 truck, which is, we're not talking about $30,000. You're talking about, I don't know, $50,000 or more, for the most popular vehicle out there, who said to me, Americans are spending a lot of money for their vehicles. And I'm one of those individuals who, we're not taxing enough, but I am more than happy to give a tax subsidy to any person who will buy an electric vehicle. Just
They do exist now. If you buy an electric vehicle now, you get a $7,500 tax rebate. Instead, if you buy a Tesla, because they sold too many. There are two options.
so, yes, everybody should be able to buy them to what's in the market.
Yes.
I have a question about renewable energy. It may be renewable, but the storage itself is toxic. In the sense that we're using batteries to hold that electricity. Now, I believe in renewable energy, but it still is not.
You're right. There's a lot of technological and engineering work to be done in safe battery technology and in disposable battery technology and in recyclable battery technology. But I have faith in.
We have public transportation that we invest in that.
You're speaking to an ardent cyclist. I own 5 myself. But your point is well taken. The money that is saved and the old mechanized technology in reducing the electric cars and so forth, go forward and fund a great research in recyclable batteries or other kinds of storage that we haven't even thought of yet. Batteries are old technology. They will be replaced by other kinds of, I can imagine, small little nuclear power plants. Each house has one. When you're driving down the highway, your car will be charged on a strike. I mean, I have a great faith in the technology because it can be applied for great good. It can also be applied for great.
To your point about batteries, and Kris's follow-up on that, there are projects of batteries. We've done a lot of really interesting using solar energy and wind energy. How ways of storing energy. For example, while you have the available energy in generating, moving water from one level to another, when you place it at a higher level, they have power ready when you go that up to them. And you can take wind energy and convert it to hydroelectric energy. And also, it's like that. So if you're a small company investor, now's the time to get in. There's some amazing things out there.
Well, I hope that what you're saying is true, that we have young people who are interested in the future of their world. So many of us who are, we're old, not to say that we don't have an impact, but it's going to take the younger people to be invested and
The biggest
understand.
hiring now, the biggest demand for talent is in the engineering of future technologies, whether they're computer chips, whether they're computer-powered instruments, whether it's energy, solar energy, grid energy. That's where the action is now for many, many. So this is why engineering schools are busting. Biology schools are busting. Chemistry schools are busting. But that said, it is just as important for the humanities schools to be busting at the same time. We don't have the ethics or philosophy, the art, smartly smartly engineer and smartly apply technologies, then we will be very far ahead.
I'm economist, but we live in a market economy, and so a lot of the portions that people's purchases, depend on the cost of fuels and such. So you have some comments about carbon taxes or the payments that might be beneficial for sequestration or something like that. How does that fit into the picture of problem solving from your point of view?
I wish I was an expert on carbon taxes and that whole economic calculation. I know there are many sides of that story. I do know that in the very successful European countries that have ultimately and have become energy self-sufficient just from from the power and some solar. A good deal of the carbon taxes has funded that. And the companies have realized that it's a win-win for them. I think the smart carbon tax is one thing. However, just the word tax is an evil. Whereas, the Northern European socialist countries, the word tax is not evil because they're realizing the benefits they get. Free hospitalization, free medical care, free universities. Yeah, they pay a lot more taxes, but they haven't truly understand. The country that consistently in all polls comes out as being the happiest country in the world is. Ooh. Did I hear somebody say Finland? Yeah. Despite the fact they only see the sun.